So I beat One Step from Eden, full genocide, which is probably the hardest ending to get with selicy. So I thought I would do some commentary on it. I haven't really seen a lot of commentary videos on this game, and we'll talk about, or I'll talk about what some of the decisions I made. So here I'm setting up for trying to get defense, shield, and also a lot of frost spells. I particularly think frost is pretty good. It's kind of underrated. It actually got a buff. It used to do 100 damage when you procced frost. Now it does like 150. It was good before, but it's even better now, especially late game. So right now I just skipped all those, not really relevant. Here, 20 damage, shuffles, pretty decent. It's free. The thing about this is you probably want to pick most of those up because we will be killing the Shopkeeper for a full genocide ending. It's required. Wasn't really looking for any poison here. Mostly a lot of spells that cast frost and shield. Zenith is a spell that's particularly good early to mid game just because it does a lot of damage, and you can synergize it with your attack, and if you piano tap the buttons, for example, for your spell and your attack, you can cast it in the enemy's field, which I do often in this run. So here, pretty unlucky with what she has. No upgrades from the packs. So typically I try to get an upgrade, and I'm looking for a double cast on that spell. No, I didn't get it, so I just went with shield. This is how you dodge that particular spell. That's one of the harder ones to dodge, but you just move in a square grid. This you can get around by just slashing like that. And then most of the time I try to attack her while she is anchored doing the spell. So one thing to take into account as well is most bosses, including the Shopkeeper here, they have a different attack pattern once you reach a certain health threshold. I think what the Shopkeeper happens to be, when she goes under 1,000 health, she'll throw in 2 different attacks. One of them is actually quite dangerous, and it requires quite a bit of practice. It took me a while to actually get a hang of the rhythm of the spell, and we'll see it here. I think I get hit twice by it, which is so this is one of the new ones. It's kind of hard to dodge, and this is the other one. This one's real difficult. Again, you move in a square, but that looks easier than it actually is. The timing is quite strict and fast. And you need to pay attention to where the first one hits because it goes in a counter clockwise motion. So we can see that one, that first cast was on the left side, so I stood to the right waiting for it. It's not counterclockwise, it's clockwise. You want to kill her here for the full genocide. So what makes the genocide run particularly difficult is you can't mitigate RNG, and so you can't set up decks, or you can't set up your spells the way you want to efficiently. So you kind of have to, like, my plan is frost and shield, but if that doesn't work out, you have to kind of take what the game is giving you. Flow stack is pretty interesting when frost damage is dealt. Sometimes you can get things like defense on flow, So that's why I picked that one. And there's other flow type, I guess, passives that you can get. But for that, I'm particularly looking for increased defense. So there's different defense layers. One is shield, and the other is defense itself. You start off with 0 defense. Shield isn't really that important early game, or even mid game, I would say. If you've been playing the game long enough, you can kind of steamroll early to mid game without taking too much damage with minimal shield. I mean, if you really focus, you can probably not get hit for the first like 3 stages, something like that. So it's not really that important, but you want to make sure that you have shield while you're going into the late game and while you're going into Eden, because managing shield late game is essential to actually beating it. That's a big part. Here I went with removal. Removal is also important because I want to get rid of Zenith. That spell at the very end is really tricky to use, especially against the last boss. So my plan is to remove it from the deck. Additionally, I don't remember what the spell is called, but the one that applies 2 frost and heals. I'm planning to remove that as well for something that does damage and applies frost at the same time. Mana regen is always good. I like to be around 1 mana regen by the time late game comes around. I think it's pretty decent to have that. It's a good idea actually to have that much. Another important thing is, if you're trying to do this, is really understanding enemy AI, how they move, because you can dodge most of it if you understand exactly how they attack and the attack patterns. Defense is pretty good. 40 defense is like crazy, and it lasts for 3 seconds. That's not bad. You can use that for particularly difficult attack patterns from bosses. And if you get lucky and you get a passive that applies defense to your shield as well, that's really, really strong, because apparently that shield doesn't take defense into consideration. It just takes the raw damage before it comes to you. Here I was debating between Hailstorm and Hockey. Hockey is particularly underrated, I feel, especially if you can double cast it. But I was banking on Hailstorm because it's a little bit more consistent and it can apply a lot of damage, especially if you double cast it. The other thing I'm waiting for actually is a double lift spell that lets you, I think it's called Spell Echo, so it allows you to cast another spell, cast the same spell that you just cast previously, which is extremely, extremely strong, especially for shield management, because you can save a high shield spell and double cast it. So that's another thing I'm looking out for. One thing I should mention is I did pick up Hailstorm, which requires 4 mana, but I only have 3. So what I'm banking for is that one of the leveling perks is increased maximum mana. So we'll see if that's the case or not. If I get it, I'm pretty sure that cost me a lot, but yeah. I think that was mana on Frost, which is really good, because I'm trying to do a Frost type build here with her. Violet is pretty easy, honestly. Even the higher level Violet is pretty easy. Some of the bosses are more difficult in later stages than others, I feel. She is not one of them. This is a pretty straightforward fight. I don't even know if I take any damage, and I'm managing shield pretty well. Upgrade as a reward is always pretty good. It's not always the best option, but in a full genocide, when you don't have the shopkeeper to buy upgrades, it's pretty good. Most of the time, I'm looking on using it on double cast to try to get double cast either on spells that do frost or shield. One of them, I saved it here because I think at the time I was thinking that I need to focus a little bit more on shield. So I'm going to save it just in case I get some powerful shield cards that I can do double cast on. Having a Hellstorm be cost 4 and I only having 3 maximum mana is a little bit annoying, but they I think the game was actually patched where you can actually cast it out of your slot for a reduced casting fee, or you can just shuffle your deck manually. I think most of the run I hold on to it and shuffle the deck manually, so it's not really that big of a deal. But it seems like if I were to reflect on this, it was probably a bad idea, or maybe I just had bad RNG. It's pretty bad. I think it's pretty bad RNG to not get max mana until like super late game, but it could happen, which did happen in this run. In terms of routing, the paths that I take, I basically mid to early game, I just go for the route that has the most chests for extra prizes and whatnot. For the most part, that's what I'm trying to do, but that kind of varies. You know, you gotta take what the game gives you. For example, sometimes if you get the passive where your max health is increased by killing hostages, I'll definitely route differently and try to hit all hostages to get that. So you just kind of gotta make ad hoc decisions like that. But right now I'm focusing mainly on chests and yeah. But then we'll see here later game, late game, that as things become more difficult and you start taking more damage, I will also look for the resting side as well. So here, I thought that my RNG is particularly awkward, and I'm not getting a lot of shield. I'm not getting a lot of DPS spells that I want. And I do have some passive flows, flow skills. So I'm actually, I'm trying to analyze like this one, gain 10 shield whenever tile is broken. So the earthen armor actually synergizes pretty well with this and any other thing that breaks tiles. So I'm thinking maybe I try to get an extra boost in shield through this. It can end up, it's kind of a difficult spell. It could put you in a tricky situation because it blocks off where you can move. But I felt that that decision was for like the last boss, and because the whole grid is available to you on the last boss, it's not as big of a deal. So I'm planning for that. Right now, I actually have a lot of defensive spells, more so than usual, I would say, that I have at this stage. Mostly around this time I mostly have a lot of DPS spells. I took Trinity just in case I can synergize off some other spells, but we'll see here. So that was an awkward situation where I had to reload. I didn't want to wait. And yeah, this fight is fairly straightforward. I think Terra is actually quite dangerous later, late game as a boss. So I try to take her kind of early to mid because there's a lot of things that you have to pay attention to and manage, like your movement and what tiles are available for you to walk on. And you can, and also the bouncing lasers are kind of annoying and can actually do a lot of damage if you're positioned incorrectly or at a weird angle. So I try to take her early to mid game. This fight goes pretty fast, pretty smoothly. So here, Blizzard is actually, you know, I would normally take Blizzard in this case, but because of RNG, I don't really have a lot of, I can't really cast it, and I'm 2 away, so that's like a minimum 2 levels. So what I'm thinking is I probably won't be able to cast it. It's kind of risky, and I'd have to remove it, so I need another 3 removal if I don't get 5 by the end. So I went with Waterfall because I had some flow stuff. I got the shield that does flow. If you can double cast that thing is insane actually, the Waterfall. If you get a lot of flow going, it's quite crazy. But it ended up being not as strong as I thought with what was going on. I couldn't really foresee that, so later I'm pretty sure I take it out of my deck, but we'll see here. It's also very situational, like spells that are very exact like that are decent, but for a full genocide run against the last boss, I feel like you need spells that are that cover a lot of ground. You need AoE. She moves around pretty fast and a lot, so in order for you to mitigate like how accurate you are with your spells, I try to do a lot of AoE, and ones that actually, like spells that hit 4 tiles in front of you, are actually require even more accuracy than something like the needle or something that shoots straight across the whole screen. So maybe I didn't really make that good of a decision on that, and that's why I take it out, and it cost me a little bit, but I was hoping for some synergies that basically didn't show up. Anubis is alright. I feel like from some of the stuff that I've been reading, a lot of people like that spell. I feel it's kind of overrated. It's a guarantee spell without any accuracy or positioning required, and you can get double cast on it for an easy 80, but I don't know, I just don't think it's that good, especially if you're good with positioning. Some of the high damage stuff is much better, I would say, but that's just my opinion on Anubis. So at this point, I'm starting to realize that I'm not getting a lot of frost damage spells. And so I think I'm banking on doing a little bit more flow, so that's why I take that spell. It was a very strange run, actually. I thought I wasn't actually going to finish this. I was going to die. But it got pretty powerful towards the end in terms of how much shield I could generate. So it ended up working. That beam cannon that also adds the shield beam that does damage and adds shield is extremely powerful. Generally, I try to upgrade it, either get more shield on hit or double cast. And then duct tape, which I got, is extremely powerful because when you shuffle your deck, it takes the mechanics is that the game takes a percentage of your shield away, and then duct tape reduces that percentage, which allows you to manage your shield game a little bit better. At first, I thought it was kind of weird that the game took so much of your shield away, but I guess you could, and I thought the balancing was weird on it, but you could, eventually I realized that you can abuse it, so it's actually balanced pretty well, that mechanic. I got ice hockey. Ice hockey, I think that's what that spell is called. It's pretty good. It's pretty random, but if you can double cast it, or even if you don't double cast it, it can hit multiple times, and you can be accurate with it. You can kind of guide it a little bit because it comes out diagonally, but you're just kind of waiting. It's just kind of like a random cast. Reva is actually one of the bosses I feel like is a bit dangerous later on, especially with the bouncing lasers. The higher level Reva does like a lot of, like her second phase where they get more attacks, does a lot of those bouncing lasers, and you can take a lot of damage. So she becomes increasingly dangerous the further you take her as a boss. Some of her attacks are pretty easy to dodge, but all in all, I think this goes okay. I actually haven't taken a lot of damage up until now. I think I went through 2 or 3 stages with like 749 at some point, so that's just a lot of practice and knowing enemy movements and patterns. So here I was thinking about taking Ragnarok, but again, this is a very accurate spell, which hits, you need to be extremely accurate with it. And I thought, there's some synergy there with creating more shield, but I just decided to go against it. So the passive I just picked up is the one that defense also applies to your shield, which is very strong. I don't think I have any actual defense increasing spells or passives yet, but I'm hoping to get some, and I think that's why I went with that. Triforce is actually pretty powerful, especially if you're doing, if you have a lot of Trinity in your deck. I don't, but I do have the passive where when you reshuffle, it applies one, you get one Trinity. So there's a little bit of synergy there. It's not bad. The best, I think one of the best ones that you can get with Selicy is the passive that heals you for 40, I think, when you apply Frost, or when you do Frost damage, which is pretty crazy, especially if you have a lot of spells that apply Frost. It's insane. I don't think I get it on this run. Frost Barrage, I was looking for that super early. It's crazy that I got it this late. Frost Barrage is absolutely one of the more essential ones here. See, I was trying to get double cast, but I got 20 extra shield, which is decent. Frost Barrage is good because it can apply multiple shots, and it does multiple frosts, and it does pretty decent damage actually. I didn't get double cast on it, but I got an extra shot, which is not bad. For the beam cannon, if you line up enemies, you get more shield. So that's one way to use it. That's one of the more efficient ways to use it, and that's how I try to use it. I also took health as an upgrade because it's getting a little bit later. So I wanted to make sure I was at a good max health as possible. There I took defense. Defense on flow isn't as consistent as a perpetual 2 defense. So I just did a perpetual, did the defense where it's guaranteed to. At this point, I'm banking that I'm probably not going to get more cold and frost type spells. So I'm picking up random spells that I find useful. Caltrops are pretty good, especially if the enemy moves around a lot, which the last boss does. And a lot of bosses do, so it's a really good boss killing spell. So at this point I realized that waterfall isn't actually working out the way I wanted to, so I removed it. It cost me a remove. So right now I'm sitting at 15 spells in my deck. Most of the time I want to stay in 15, under 15. Sometimes I'm even at 12, but it just depends sort of what I get. In this case, I'm pretty sure I stack my deck up a lot. So I think that's how you say his name. He's pretty easy, even late game, so that's why I kind of took him late game. Any damage over time, spells like the like the flame spell there is pretty strong. It also covers a lot of AoE on the grid. So yeah, this fight goes pretty smoothly. Not sure if I take any damage in here, but most of his attacks are pretty easy to dodge, even as a late game boss. So here I don't take merit badge because permanently increasing, I think the way spell damage works is, this is what I think, I'm not particularly sure, but 1 spell damage increases the damage of a spell by literally 1. So if your spell does 40 and then you have an extra 1 spell damage, you'll do 41 instead. But there are some spells that do have like crazy synergies with spell damage. Like there's one where one spell damage counts as like a 20, does 20 damage, like a multiplier. So if you have like 5 spell damage, it's 20 times 5 and it does 100 damage like that. I forget what spell that is, but it's pretty insane. But I didn't go with that. I went with removal because at this point I'm pretty worried about Hailstorm getting stuck in my deck because I haven't gotten more than 3 maximum mana. So I need, I think, minimum 2 removals at this point for the last boss. So that's why I took that one. At this point, I'm also thinking that I probably am not going to be applying Frost as much as I actually wanted to. So I'm going to focus on defense and getting in damage when I can. So that spell I just took that breaks 2 tiles, it actually does it does decent damage, and then it also gives me 20 shield because I break 2 tiles on use. If I'm in a correct position, like if you're at the very top or the very bottom, you're only going to break 1 tile. But yeah, a little bit of double utility on that one. That cryo spell is pretty decent, does a lot of damage, and also applies frost. It's kind of slow to come out though, but I took it anyway, since Blizzard or whatever that spell is called might not be usable. Want to stay stacked up on health at this point in the game as much as possible. You never know when you lose focus and you get like a hard combination. Like this one seemed like kind of a tricky enemy layout, so you never know when you're gonna get that and take some damage. And I did take some damage here. Always want to be towards the mid-late and late game. You want to be as maxed out on life as possible. Luck is alright, but it also increases difficulty. So I kind of don't like using luck on full genocide runs. It depends how confident you are in your skill as well. Here I changed to double lift because I'm looking for spell echo, and I'm also looking for spells that manipulate time. So that stop time and that slow time down. Those types of spells are particularly useful against very difficult attack patterns, especially that the last boss has. So that's why I switched to double time, I think it's called, focus. So maybe I can get that to double cast, the spell echo, and some time manipulation spells. I took a particularly long time trying to decide here what to do. Devour is actually pretty good, but it's pretty situational. You have to hold on to it, especially in a large deck. Then Energizer is decent as well because it increases damage and it comes out pretty fast. So I went with that. At this point, I thought I needed a bit more damage than defense. I thought I can probably get away with just managing my shield well enough. It also costs less, that's another thing. So at this point in time, I need spells that don't take up a lot of mana, and Devour was 3 with a consume. Gunner, I find he's pretty easy, even late game. His attacks are pretty easy to dodge. That bomb one, the way I kind of handled that is I pay attention to what the first bomb was, where it lands. So he shoots it, and then I just stay on that row because he will never shoot in that row again. He'll try to shoot the other bombs. And his attack patterns like that are pretty telegraphed, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. He's pretty easy to dodge. He moves around a lot, so ground dot damage works well against him. This fight is going pretty fast. I don't remember that he got wrecked this hard when I was doing the fight. This you just kind of have to dodge. It's pretty easy, but that was a really fast, pretty clean fight. Late game, I would say that if you take less than, me personally, oh, there's Echo, so pretty good. That's key. So against bosses, me personally, if I take less than 2 damage on these, I guess level 6, 7, 8 bosses, it's pretty good. If you take less than 100 or no, I mean you're set obviously. But I'm fine with 200. That to me that's like a successful boss fight because you can probably get more health coming up. One thing about spell Echo or Echo that's really good is it allows you to cast high damage or high cost cards with only 2, so that's another benefit of it. One thing I've been wondering is actually, what character is kind of the strongest or easiest to do this with, and I'm not particularly sure where Selicy ranks on this. Corset is actually really good because it's basically if you already have shield, you can make it like a net 60. I think I'm doing the math right there, if I remember the numbers correctly. Net 60 shield gain, and then if you double cast it, or if you echo it, right, there's another 60, 120. But yeah, I'm not sure what characters are the strongest. I always kind of wonder that. I haven't really looked at a lot of videos. Kind of try to, for the most part, play most games like in a vacuum until I do what I want or accomplish what I want in them, and then I kind of look stuff up. So in this one, I'm kind of curious to see how people are tackling full genocide, and how I wonder how people are ranking the characters as well. So this robot that shoots in that sweeping pattern, one thing that's interesting is that the final boss uses an attack that has a sweeping pattern like that. It's a bit flashier and it moves faster. So, and actually, it's kind of tricky to dodge because it moves so fast. But the last boss uses a pattern like that, and that we'll see later. I find Saffron one of the easiest bosses, so I try to save her for last most of the time. I don't think I get hit a lot here, so we'll see 958 life. The reason I find her easy is because you can tell what spells she's trying to cast. They're right above her, and then you can just position yourself to dodge those spells. so she's fairly easy. She kind of moves a little bit, she stays stationary a lot, so a lot of, you can hit her with a lot of stuff very quickly. If you're playing a character that just empties the deck, she's, you know, very quickly, she's very, very easy. At this point, I still don't have more than 3 mana, which I found particularly worrying, but yeah, we'll see. See, like spells like that Ragnarok and this that lightning bolt, depending on, you know that it's supposed to hit 4 tiles across, so you can just play outside of that hitbox for her spell. Same with the swords, you know where those are gonna particularly do damage. So most of her attacks are pretty telegraphed and easy to dodge, so that's why I like to save her towards the end. Here's Devour again. It's too late for Devour to be useful, I think, this late in the game. Shield Battery and 1 removal. Here I think I'm looking to see if I need more than 1 removal. And I think I did. Because at this point I'm thinking I'm going to have to remove Blizzard and Zenith. And 20 shield if you're under 20 or whatever that was. I don't, it's, you know, it's okay, but I think that my shield generating capabilities right now are so good that I will hardly be under 20 shield, and if so, it probably won't be for long. The Eden level can be quite dangerous depending on the enemy layout, and everything seems to do a lot of damage, so it's quite tricky. If I can get to the last boss with at least 700, 800 life, I'm pretty satisfied with the performance on the level on the whole. But yeah, it can get pretty crazy here in Eden. But I suppose you know, it's the last level, so it's gonna probably be the hardest. Incline is very powerful, does a lot of damage, and it creates a lot of DPS. It also had Apply Frost on hit, chance to apply Frost on hit, so that's a really good upgrade synergy to what I'm trying to do. Finally, at this stage, I get a increased maximum mana. Took long enough. This is very late, so now now I can use Blizzard, which is really nice. So I'm a little bit less worried about it, and my mana regen is pretty decent. I think I also get some sort of mana regen on hit from a particular source, so I'm pretty set on that in terms of how much mana I need. Anything else is kind of like frosting on the cake, and maybe will allow me to unload spells a little bit quicker. Yeah, that enemy, actually the one that kind of teleports and dashes towards you, is kind of dangerous because it also puts up a shield when it's dashing towards you. And I find the enemy that casts the turrets are also I like most of the enemies here are dangerous because those turrets do a lot of damage. And it also increases the amount of things that you need to be aware of on your field and the enemy bullets. Defense. Did I pick up defense? Yeah, I picked up defense. It's pretty good. Right now I think I have 4 total. Maybe more if I'm not seeing some defense on flow. Which also applies to shield as well. So defensively at this point, I think I'm pretty straight about my defense. It's whether I can execute is basically what I'm thinking it's going to come down to at this point. And I think I have enough spell variety in terms of AoE and precision. Like, I'm not too far into like very precise spells, and I'm kind of diversified. So I have damage over time with a high AoE. I have precise stuff in a long like horizontal attack. Frost damage, damage that also gives me shield, so I'm pretty good. This spell right here is actually really good, but I can't cast it even at 5. And that's a double cast. That would have been a really sick spell to have at this point, but I just can't use it. I get another mana. Gain 3 shield whenever flame damage is dealt. That's pretty good, but I only have, I think, 1 flame spell, so I opted for more mana just to be better stocked and to just have more utility, because the more mana you have, the kind of like the more options and the faster you can burn through, especially if you're like at max mana. I was holding on to 1 upgrade, and I just used it on shield. Just the more shield you have, the better you probably are going to survive, because it is a very important defensive layer. And I got double cast on that, which is lucky, and it's pretty good, because I think you get 80 right off the bat. So this fight is just a lot of dodging. I focus more on generating shield than I do on damage, so shield generation is takes priority over damage. A lot of this fight, I'm hovering around 200 to 300 shield, which is pretty good. So right now, she has entered that threshold stage of where she has new attacks that she does. One of them is that double row of balls that come out, and then the other one was that crazy pattern one right there that I mentioned earlier. It's a sweeping pattern. It's a little bit tricky to dodge, but if you just pay attention and you go back and forth like I did there, you can dodge it. This is that's a new one, but it's a variation of one of them that she does. That one, if you stay all the way back and you just pay attention to where they come, you can dodge them. That one is a bit tricky too, with the splash, the glitter splash spell. So at this point, I'm just really focusing on dodging and I know I'm close, so just dodge and get my damage out as much as possible. Yeah, so that was the commentary for a full genocide. You need to kill the shopkeeper. Just keep that in mind, or else you get sent back. And it starts another loop, which is not a full genocide, but that's also kind of interesting. I also killed the shopkeeper in the first stage because she gets more damage and becomes progressively more dangerous. She's like a very dangerous boss fight, even if you know the mechanics. So trying to do it first stage is what I would recommend. At first, it's kind of difficult to understand that fight, but I got to the point where I could basically kill her, I don't know, 70% of the time, maybe 80%. At first, it would take me at least 4 tries before I could kill her, but the more you do it, the more you understand, the better you're able to execute. So that was, hope you learned something if you're struggling to get through that. That was just my commentary, a little bit about my thought process of how I handle tackling this game. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks.